Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly through crooked cobblestone alleys, where the stench of roasted meat and horse manure mingles under the glow of torchlight. You can almost feel the damp air sticking to your skin as you move past haggling merchants and gossiping bakers. Somewhere, a lute plays off-key, and a drunk laughs too loud. But you're not here for the festival or the bread. You're here for the thieves of the market square, the ones who make medieval towns pulse with a heartbeat of quiet, constant crime. You probably won't survive this if you don't keep a hand on your coin purse, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your location and local time down in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You push through the crowd, where a boy no older than 12 darts between boots. He's not shopping, he's working. One hand distracts with a tumble of apples, the other lifts a silver clasp from an unsuspecting noble's belt. This, right here, is the medieval career ladder for the desperate. Petty theft wasn't glamorous, but it was lucrative if you were fast and forgettable. In places like London, Paris, and Florence, pickpockets, beggars, and cut purses formed invisible networks. Trading stolen goods through back-alley fences who looked like ordinary shopkeepers by day, the towns tried to fight back. Some cities, like 14th-century Florence, introduced night watch patrols. The Compagnia della Giustizia, justice companies, strutted through the streets with lanterns and cudgels. But thieves learned their rhythm, their routes, and even their personalities. One popular trick was to blend into religious processions. Nobody dared stop a pilgrim with a rosary, even if that rosary used to belong to the mayor's wife. Historians still argue whether urban crime was worse in the Middle Ages or simply more noticeable. After all, most records come from court documents, meaning only the unlucky or clumsy got written into history. The talented ones? They vanished, like smoke from a candle snuffed out too soon. Then there were the guild thieves. Yes, some thieves actually organized, mimicking legitimate guilds to control territory and share profits. In 15th-century Paris, you could apparently find a loose hierarchy of beggars and pickpockets known as les caquillots, a name that later inspired parts of Villon's poetry. They spoke in code, wore hidden symbols, and might even initiate newcomers with mock religious rites. Think of it as the world's earliest multi-level marketing scheme, but with more daggers. You wander past a bakery that smells of warm rye and honey, and you notice another type of criminal, one who steals less visibly. The medieval swindler. He sells holy relics that might be lamb bones from last week's dinner, or miracle potions brewed from cheap ale and garden weeds. The church tried to crack down, but the appetite for the miraculous was too strong. You could probably make a fortune if you had the nerve to declare that your cat's whisker once brushed against St. Peter's sandal. The irony, of course, was that medieval people didn't see all theft as equal. Steal from the rich and you were sometimes romanticized. Steal from the church and you risked eternal damnation. Yet steal from a foreign merchant, and you might even be seen as patriotic. Laws bent like reeds depending on who you knew, who you bribed, and how convincingly you wept at confession. There's a story from 13th century England about a man named Roger of York, a market thief who escaped capture by hiding inside a barrel of fish. When guards finally rolled it open, the smell was so unbearable they let him go. Whether it's true or not, you can almost picture it, Roger emerging slimy, triumphant, and very much alive. You linger near a tavern, and the air hums with laughter and lies. Gambling, cheating, selling watered wine, small crimes that greased the medieval economy. Even some town officials dabbled in fraud. Fines collected from thieves often ended up quietly split among the very guards who arrested them. Medieval justice was, in many ways, a side hustle of its own. Every so often, the crowd parts for a different figure, the town crier, reading out the names of recently hanged thieves. The punishment is meant to scare, but it's also free entertainment. You can imagine people cheering. half hoping to see someone they knew. And yet, after every execution, new hands still reach for new purses. It's easy to think of the medieval marketplace as chaos, but it had its rhythm. Crime wasn't an interruption, it was part of the music. You might even find yourself lulled by it, the clang of coins, the murmur of bargaining, the quickening of your pulse when you feel movement at your side. For a moment, you could be victim or villain, it's just a matter of whose hand moves faster. The sun dips low, the stalls begin to close, and torches flicker against timber beams. Somewhere nearby, a bell tolls for evening prayer, its echo blending with laughter and the faint jingle of stolen silver. You pull your cloak tighter, half from chill, half from paranoia. This town never really sleeps, it only pretends to, and as you slip through the dim streets, you realize something quietly unsettling. The medieval thief was not just a criminal. He was a survivor. In a world of famine, plague, and taxes, stealing wasn't rebellion, it was adaptation. You can almost respect the audacity, even if you'd rather keep your coin. The night air thickens, and you keep walking, deeper into the maze of crooked walls and shadowed corners. Somewhere ahead, a torch flares, and another story waits. You follow the torchlight until the market chatter fades, replaced by hooves and the groan of iron. The smell of oil and leather thickens near the castle gates. The guards barely glance at you, they're watching a column of armored riders swaggering in under moonlight. Mud-streaked banners, dented but gleaming armor, heavy purses. These aren't noble crusaders. They're knights for hire. War here isn't about honor, it's about opportunity. You see it in their faces, drunk, proud, rich. In the late 14th century, companies of freelance warriors roamed Europe, routiers in France, condottieri in Italy, free companies in England. Free meant free of rules. Some called them soldiers stranded by peace. Others organized criminals. Their business was simple: demand protection money, or burn everything down. The great company of Albert Sturs and Frau Moriel could muster thousands, selling their swords to pope or enemy alike. Imagine two armies facing each other, both hired from the same pool, ready to switch sides before supper. You step aside as a mercenary dismounts, tossing his blood-stained gauntlet onto a table of coins. He laughs with broken teeth, rich for the night. Chivalry is just a bedtime story. Here, gold is God. Some knights even issued written contracts, detailing pay rates and loyalty terms, like renting a cavalry from a violent stable. Historians still debate, early capitalists or extortionists with paperwork. Not all were villains. Some believed they kept order, others fought for causes, until the money ran out. A knight polishing his sword by the fire knows honor won't fill his stomach. Far from battlefields, stories spread of armored highway robbers. One German noble taxed caravans like a king, claiming, "If the emperor taxes the roads, why shouldn't I?" Even the Black Prince left a trail of looted towns, his chevauchee a strategy that looked like theft to the poor. You pass a smithy where an old man hammers dents from a helmet. He speaks of the hawk, a mercenary who fought under every banner, his men painting both crests on their shields. He died rich, the man says. But no one knows where he's buried. It feels timeless, modern war profiteers echoing the same rhythm: fight, earn, vanish. Armor changes, greed doesn't. On the ramparts, mercenary campfires burn like fallen stars. Rough singing rises: tomorrow, we fight for Florence. Unless Milan pays more. Laughter follows. Historians still argue if mercenaries advanced or poisoned civilization. They professionalized war, but made killing transactional. Knighthood began as vow, ended as business. As you turn away, the smell of roasted meat clings to your cloak. Behind you, a man brags of a kill, another counts coins. It's the sound of survival, not glory. You keep walking, feeling the weight of their armor and the emptiness beneath it. The road stretches on, toward a palace where death won't come with a sword, but with a cup. The road narrows into marble corridors, the air shifting, less smoke, more perfume and paranoia. You step softly through a medieval court, where death isn't shouted on battlefields but whispered over wine. Tonight's company isn't mercenaries, it's poisoners, those elegant killers who turn death into etiquette. Torches flicker against gold-threaded tapestries. But rot hides beneath the incense. Every noble smiles too long, laughs too late. Here, your greatest threat isn't your enemy, it's your dinner guest. You pass a feast of roasted peacocks and honeyed figs, a jeweled decanter gleams. Nobles season politics like food, with poison. A pinch here, a drop there. Whispered tales speak of Eleanor of Aquitaine's court, where enemies often fell ill after supper. And Lucrezia Borgia, accused of wearing a hollow ring to drip venom into wine. Exaggerated or not, belief itself was enough to breed fear. Poison was the thinking noble's sword, silent, clean, poetic. Apothecaries even sold antidotes of crushed emeralds, pearls, or unicorn horn, useless, but comforting. Behind a carved screen, courtiers whisper, a mistress dead from a golden cup, a bishop's rival ill after communion. In a world where medicine barely explained the flu, poison had cover in every bellyache. Not all poisoners were nobles. Some were servants, especially women, who wielded poison where power denied them. Legend tells of Tofana, seller of aqua tofana, a potion disguised as holy water for desperate wives. Maybe myth, maybe not. Her name endured, kings employed tasters, poor souls who sipped first and hoped bees or stone amulets would save them. They didn't. Deeper in the hall, a velvet-clad woman smiles as her rival takes a bite. His lips pale, she doesn't flinch. Here, power isn't in armies, it's in steady hands pouring tea. Of course, not all poisonings were planned. Rancid meats, lead goblets, spoiled ale did plenty of killing. But suspicion always needed a face. Even monks were accused of spiking wine. In the torchlit gardens, roses bloom over graves of unknown illness. In medieval courts, that often meant politically inconvenient. A scholar once wrote these poisoners lived in a world of mirrors, where even innocence reflected guilt. The feast quiets. A cup is raised. The candlelight trembles. Each sip could be salvation. Or the end, servants clear plates, crossing themselves before touching goblets. Someone snuffs a candle, as if to erase the act. Beyond the gardens, the night deepens. Inside, death wears velvet and perfume. Outside, it waits in rougher shapes. The garden's perfumed air fades as you step into the damp chill of a moonlit forest. Branches creak like old hinges, an owl hoots, and the soft path turns rough beneath your boots. You've left jeweled halls for the greenwood, the outlaw's kingdom. Everyone knows Robin Hood, the noble thief. But real medieval forests weren't full of merry men. For every heroic archer, there were many who slit throats for bread. Ahead, a fire crackles. These woods, Sherwood, Barnesdale, Dean, were vast and nearly lawless. To be outside the king's peace meant anyone could kill you without question. A shadow moves, a ragged man with a bow, beard wild, grin toothless. This isn't a legend. This is survival. Historians still debate whether Robin Hood was real or a composite of countless bandits. Records name Robert Hood and Robin Hood, criminals who may have inspired the myth. The name itself might have been a title, like Anonymous with longbows. Life as an outlaw was brutal. You slept under dripping trees, trusted no one. Yet peasants often admired them, nobles taxed them dry, outlaws at least humiliated their oppressors. Some bands even had codes. The Black Dog of Arden, for example, supposedly ordered his men to share spoils equally and spare women. A kind of medieval PR. Ballads would later sing of them, skipping the bloodier parts. You step over a slick log, a glint, a coin, lies ahead. I'd leave that, a voice warns. A man emerges, arrow notched, grin crooked. We only take what you don't need. Which, of course, is everything. the forest was a refuge for poachers, deserters, escaped serfs, and soldiers. Killing deer, a royal offense, could cost your life. Merchants, monks, and tax collectors were all fair game. One Benedictine monk even joined a band to learn humility. Likely a fast lesson, some outlaws were tolerated, even hired as enforcers or spies. Edward III recruited many as archers for his wars in France. Crime, in a way, became a resume, you push deeper, fog curling low, campfires fading to embers. A rabbit darts past. Hunter and hunted, both just trying to survive, the Robin Hood legend endures, historians say, because people needed a hero, or a fantasy of justice beyond the law. Maybe both. At a clearing, a cross is carved into a tree. Smoke, pine, and the faint twang of a bowstring fill the night. Another traveler, another warning, you tighten your cloak and keep walking. Ahead lies a village where danger won't wear a hood or carry a bow, but judge from a pulpit, you emerge from the forest into a village where smoke rises not from hearths but stakes. The air tastes of ash and accusation. You've left Sherwood's daggers for something colder, witch trials, where panic burns not only bodies but reason itself. It starts quietly. A cow dies, a child falls ill, a storm ruins the harvest. Someone must be blamed, and it's always easier to accuse a neighbor than the sky. In the muddy square, eyes turn sideways. A woman is dragged forward, hair tangled, dress torn. Someone whispers that she spoke to her cat too kindly, baked perfect bread, smiled when others didn't. Welcome to medieval evidence. The church both warned against superstition and fed it. The Malleus Maleficarum would come later, but paranoia is already thick here. A sneeze could start a trial, a bruise could end one. Historians still argue, was this about faith or control? Likely both. You can't burn bad weather, but you can burn your neighbor. The tests could almost seem absurd. The swimming test, tie a woman, toss her in water, if she floats, she's guilty, if she sinks, she's innocent but dead. Medieval logic at its neatest. You move closer to the platform. A priest reads from his book, voice steady, eyes uncertain. Doubt could make him the next accused. The crowd, however, feels none, fear has become theater. Children climb fences, vendors sell chestnuts. It's horrifyingly festive, confessions follow pain. The rack stretches both limbs and truth. One woman in Germany confessed to flying on a goat-bone broom, another in France to kissing the devil as a toad. Whether they believed it or only wanted the pain to stop is lost to history. The sky is gray. The fire catches with a whisper, then roars. She doesn't scream at first. Witch trials were never about truth, only silence. Not everyone believed. Scholars like Johannes Neider wrote that many accused were just poor or ill. But calm voices drown in a sea of fear. When the flames fade, villagers speak softly, pretending their quiet can absolve them. A priest wipes his brow, older in an hour, beside the ashes, you spot something shiny, a melted pendant. Someone mutters it's cursed. You know gold melts slower than flesh, but you keep silent. Ironically, witches were once healers, midwives, herbalists, charmers. They were valued until a child died or the harvest failed. Then their hands became a threat. Help can turn to heresy overnight. You drift toward the edge of the square. Smoke curls toward the forest, reluctant to leave. You think of the women, real or imagined, whose only crime was knowing too much, or too little, or being disliked on a rainy day. Rain begins to fall. The square quiets, but not in peace. Fear doesn't end with the fire, it only shifts shape. Tomorrow, the whispers will rise again. You glance down the muddy road toward the coast, where pirates rob openly. After all this sanctified cruelty, a little honest thievery almost sounds merciful. You follow the road east, where the sea wind smells of salt and iron, cleaner than smoke, sharper than memory. Gulls cry overhead as the horizon shimmers. A crooked harbor emerges, leaning docks, tarred ropes, ships half swallowed by mist. Borders blur here, this could be England, Flanders, or Brittany. You've reached the age of pirates and privateers, the medieval art of stealing with style. Pirates don't look like the storybooks. No neat eye patches, just rough men, fishermen after bad harvests, mercenaries between wars, all swearing God approves if the king gives them letters of marque. Piracy becomes patriotism. The docks reek of fish and rot. A gap-toothed sailor hawks a barrel of salted fish that smells like death. Languages mix, Old English, Norman French, Norse. This isn't just a port. It's organized chaos. Kingdoms at sea have no firm borders. One week, England encourages attacks on France, the next, they hang their own privateers. Legality depends on who holds the rope. Among these legends is Eustace the monk, a Benedictine turned pirate after family insult. He raided both English and French ships, wore disguises, and claimed to summon storms. When caught in 1217, the English cut off his head. A monk trading prayer beads for plunder, history has its sense of irony, sailors laugh hoarsely over dice. Spitting for luck. We set sail at dawn, one says. The sea isn't a highway but a frontier. Charts are half myth, compasses new and borrowed from the Arabic world. A voyage might take weeks, or forever. Some pirates wear silk, not salt, nobles funding privateers to raid trade rivals. Piracy wrapped in parchment. By night, you sit by a tavern fire, walls etched with ships and sharp-toothed mermaids. A song about St. Brendan drifts through the smoke, a melody more about surviving than reaching paradise. You drink ale that tastes of wood and memory. Two sailors argue over sea monsters, one swears he saw a beast with a priest's head and a pig's tail. You let it slide, a scarred captain enters. Eyes like polished glass. You look like someone running from something, he says, smiling without kindness. Good. You'll fit right in. Down at the dock, his ship creaks against the tide, the mercy of God. The crew works in silence. Lanterns swing like watchful eyes. At dawn, the harbor fades. The sea opens like a blank page. Pirates sleep little, eat worse, pray for wind. Days later, a fat merchant ship appears on the horizon. French wine, the captain grins. The crew surges. Oars pound, curses fly. The cannon's roar sounds like a door slamming in heaven. The merchant flag lowers fast. No cheers, just tired men rolling barrels across the deck. That night, the captain raises a toast with stolen wine. To luck. The crew drinks without joy. Piracy is mostly boredom, punctuated by terror. You stand at the railing. The sea stretches endless, cold, beautiful, indifferent. Beneath, wrecks rest like unmarked graves. The captain joins you quietly. The sea forgets everything, he murmurs. That's why we love her. Stars glimmer above black waves. Inland, witches burn, out here, pirates drown. Different ends. Same silence, the sea fades behind you, replaced by golden fields and the scent of hay. A monastery rises on a low hill, its stone walls softened by centuries of rain and prayer. Bells toll softly as you enter a world meant to be holy. Where holiness often hides stranger sins, you pass through the gate. The monks' calm faces feel rehearsed. Footsteps echo through the cloister, quills scratch on parchment, bees hum in the herb garden. Order, as always, makes an excellent mask. Monasteries preserved scripture, brewed beer, and stored knowledge, but they also wielded power. Some were banks, fortresses, laboratories. A poison pen can be as dangerous as a sword. The first whisper is about Brother Arnulf, a gifted scribe accused of falsifying a noble's donation, from 1 acre to 10. Days later, he was found dead at his desk. Some said poison. Others, secrets. The abbey never spoke of him again. You move deeper, breathing in beeswax and parchment. In the scriptorium, monks bend over manuscripts. One paints a halo, another doodles a snail in the margins, proof even monks need to laugh. Then comes the crypt. The air chills. A monk with winter eyes shows you a carved chest, the bones of Saint Wulfric, he whispers. 2 other churches claim the same saint. Relics, after all, bring pilgrims and profit. His breath smells of wine, and a silver ring glints on his finger. Rules bend easily here. Behind the choir loft, a locked room holds forbidden texts, alchemy, astrology, necromancy. Liber Nigromantiae lies under a cloth. Monks once dabbled in natural magic, curious even as the church condemned it. Some sought cures in herbs, others divine order in the stars, and a few whispered to shadows. Historians still debate Fulda Abbey's experiments of illumination in the 13th century. Several monks died mysteriously, some say gunpowder, others poison. Afterward, silence fell like a shroud. You sit on a cold bench, the choir's chant seeping through stone, a sound between prayer and confession. A lifetime here would mean whispering every feeling, smothering every desire. No wonder some went mad. Brother Matthew, for instance, claimed visions of the Virgin Mary, then began predicting storms and deaths. When the bishop came, he vanished. A note later appeared in a prayer book, the angels lied. Rain falls softly outside. Monks glide through the courtyard, candles glowing like drifting souls. You notice a young novice slip away to the herb garden, kneel by a small grave, and pour a vial onto the soil. "Forgive me, brother," he whispers. The grave reads Arnulf. Back inside, the abbot greets you. His voice is soft, heavy. "Sin hides best beneath virtue," he says with a thin smile. "Pray for us, traveler." The bells toll again as you step into the rain. Somewhere behind those walls, truth is written in ink that will never see daylight. The road ahead darkens, the sea breeze returns. Holiness and crime have always shared a border, and sometimes, a bed. The rain fades by morning, leaving the world washed clean, or pretending to be. You follow the cobbled road south, past vineyards and damp forests smelling of grapes and horse sweat. The trees thin, revealing a dirt highway with wooden milestones. Carriages rattle over ruts, harness bells jingle faintly, and a song drifts on the breeze, half tune, half warning. Because tonight, you walk the roads of medieval France, where every rustle might be a bird. Or a highwayman with the faster horse. The sun sinks. Cloak drawn tight, you spot a distant lantern like a promise. Between you and that light lies the territory of the Caquilids, roadside thieves who turned ambush into trade. They weren't mere pickpockets. Many were ex-soldiers from the 100 Years' War, men who traded loyalty for survival. Some worked in bands, others in small armies. People called them routiers. The robbed called them devils. The road narrows through oaks. Silence sharpens. A twig snaps behind you. A tall man steps from the shadows, scarf masking half his face. "Evening. Traveler," he says lightly. "Your purse, if you please." His dagger does the persuading. You hand over coins. He bows as if accepting a donation. "Much obliged. May the saints guide you, just not faster than me." He vanishes. Strangely, you're more amused than afraid. Highwaymen carried charm with their daggers. Later figures like Cartouche became folk heroes, but their medieval forebears were just as theatrical, quoting scripture mid-robbery, serenading victims before tying them up. Humor, after all, made fear easier to swallow, and in perches beside a crooked bridge, its sign creaking, a black horse beneath a crescent moon. Inside, firelight and cheap perfume. Merchants mutter about tolls. The innkeeper eyes the door. Travel doesn't stop for danger, a bard with a chipped lute sings, beware the road by candlelight, for gold will gleam, then fade from sight. An old man leans close, onion-breathed. The devil rides these woods, he whispers, but sometimes, he wears velvet. He speaks of the gentleman of the gallows, a masked rider who robbed nobles and priests but spared women and children. Some say disgraced knight, some vengeful monk. Whether real or not, his legend roamed farther than his horse. Thunder rolls as you imagine Europe's dark arteries, English noble thieves quoting poetry, Italian condottieri robbing between contracts. Violence stitched together by stories, past midnight, the inn empties. Rain returns, silver and soft. The bridge gleams under moonlight. Then hooves. Two masked riders emerge, leather shining like oil. They signal you aside. A carriage approaches. One takes the reins, the other the door, a woman's voice, low and sharp, "Good evening, my lord. You've been overtaxed. We're here for a refund." A silver pistol flashes. They relieve him of a chest of coins, bow gallantly, and disappear into the forest. By dawn, a muddy town greets you. Guards march a hooded prisoner through the square. "That's the highway queen," a child whispers. The hood lifts. Same eyes. Same smirk. A priest reads her sentence. She listens, then says, "You'll hang me for stealing gold, but never touch the men who stole the kingdom." The gallows later breaks. No body is found. Some say she escaped, others the devil claimed his favorite. Her legend grows, the road ahead is wet and endless. Behind you, someone's already planning the next ambush. Crime, like rain, always returns. You tighten your cloak, smiling faintly. At least the wind's at your back this time. By the next sunrise, you've left the muddy French roads behind for cities where justice itself wears a hood. The air reeks of soot and vinegar. In the square ahead, a gallows looms, ropes swaying lazily, a hooded man polishing his blade like a butcher at market. You've entered the hidden world of medieval executioners, the guild of death's accountants, feared and needed, cursed and paid. No one shook their hands, but everyone needed their work. In a world where law was part sermon, part spectacle, the executioner stood in the center of both. Some were born to the trade, inheriting it like a curse. Others were condemned criminals given a choice, hang, or do the hanging. Most chose the latter. The crowd murmurs like a storm. Children stare, merchants whisper bets. Public execution isn't just punishment, it's theater. The man on the platform is Hans of Nuremberg, famed for clean strokes and bloodless boots. Like the real Meister Franz Schmidt, he records every act, each hanging, each blade, each limb removed in the name of justice. Hans adjusts the rope for the condemned man, whispers a brief prayer, and pulls the lever. A single gasp. Cheers. Then the crowd disperses for bread, but Hans lingers, removing his hood. His face is calm, weary. "You think me cruel," he says softly. "But mercy is about timing." He explains the strange rules of his trade. Executioners lived outside the walls. Paid in meat and ale. Few would marry them. And yet they were often the best healers, who knew the body better than the man who took it apart. Surgeons even apprenticed under them. They could mend or kill, depending on the day. You follow Hans to his workshop. It smells of oil and herbs. Knives gleam on one shelf, jars of rose oil and healing balms line another. When they need a cure, he says, they forget who mixed it. Above the door hangs a silver emblem, a serpent biting its tail. The eternal circle, an executioner's brotherhood. A secret code, shared techniques, grim humor. We clean the soul, one neck at a time. By the fire, Hans sharpens his blade, the scraping sound oddly soothing. He hands you a sweet, thick beer. They think we enjoy it, he says. It's not pleasure. It's precision. We're the last kindness a condemned man meets. You ask if he ever doubts. He smiles faintly. Every night. That's why I write it down. Later, you accompany him on an unofficial duty. Under a moonless sky, the gibbet stands like a scarecrow. Hans climbs the ladder, cuts the rope, and lowers a thief's body with surprising gentleness. Every man deserves to lie down, he murmurs, whispering a prayer to the dead, not to God. Executioners were neither saints nor villains. Just custodians of consequence. Someone had to pull the lever. At dawn, Hans walks you to the gate. If you ever hear laughter at a hanging, he says, remember, none of them will sleep tonight. The gallows creaks behind you as birds begin to sing. The air tastes faintly of iron. You wonder if justice might be the oldest, cleanest crime of all. You leave the executioner's city behind, walking through fog that smells of coal smoke and memory. The road climbs into a world of marble and intrigue, palaces where walls listen better than servants. Here, crime doesn't wear hoods. It wears silk gloves and smiles that never reach the eyes. You've entered the realm of spies, traitors, and whisperers, the betrayers of empires. The first sound you hear is parchment. Seals cracking in candlelight. A courier kneels before a nobleman, handing over a letter. The noble reads, exhales, and somewhere, a kingdom tilts. In the Middle Ages, information was the sharpest weapon. Kings spied on their enemies, and on their own spies. A whisper could cut deeper than steel. You wander through a hall draped in banners. At the far end, a young man in velvet bows before the king, one of those clever faces that seem to haunt every throne room. Historians still argue, treason begins with conviction or desperation. Your first stop is Edward II England. The king's beloved Piers Gaveston, charming and arrogant, provokes the nobility with his gifts and mockery. Whispers bloom into daggers. He's kidnapped and executed for the safety of the realm. The faces change over centuries. The sin doesn't. Across the channel, France writes its own spy tales. Nicole Orsma, accused of hiding coded messages in psalms. Jeanne de Belleville, Lioness of Brittany, turns pirate after her husband's unjust death, funding a fleet with her jewels and declaring her vengeance at sea. Patriot or criminal depends on who tells the story. Night falls in a smoky inn. Dice clatter. A man behind you says, letters kill faster than swords. He introduces himself as a merchant of correspondence. You know the type, a broker of secrets. Every spy works for at least two masters, he smirks. The trick is remembering who pays this week. He pours ink-dark wine. Take Venice, he says. The Council of 10 ruled in shadows. Anonymous informants, coded letters, lions' mouths to denounce your neighbor. Everyone fed the beast. You picture it, flickering candles, carved lion heads swallowing secrets like prayers. The merchant leans closer. Do you know how many kingdoms fell because someone couldn't keep quiet at dinner? You shake your head. All of them. The candle sputters, and you're in Byzantium, where eunuchs ruled through rumor. Or in Renaissance Italy, where poison and gossip shared perfume. The Medici bought loyalty like wine and poured it when needed. You recall Sir Anthony Standen, who spied for Elizabeth I and the Pope. Lemon juice ink, coded laundry lists, oceans crossed on whispers. His last words, truth is the most dangerous disguise. And behind these stories, cryptographers, poisoners, couriers who vanished, and Roger Bacon, the friar who laid foundations for encryption before being jailed for sorcery. You step into the cold. Stars shimmer like spilled ink. Somewhere, a courier rides through the night with a scroll that could end a dynasty. In this world, everyone's a traitor eventually, to king, lover, or self. The wind rises. You pull your cloak tight, smiling faintly. At least spies die with good posture. Behind you, a bell tolls. Ahead, the road bends toward the graves of those who stole secrets, and those who paid for them. The night exhales softly, reminding you, secrets never die. They just change hands. The air feels heavier now, like a curtain being drawn over the candlelight. You follow the echo of that tolling bell into the next chapter of medieval crime, not one of knives or conspiracies, but of forbidden ink and parchment. This is where curiosity becomes contraband, and ideas themselves are the criminals. The path leads you into a dimly lit scriptorium. Dozens of monks bend over their desks, their quills whispering across vellum. You catch the faint smell of ink mixed with wax and sweat. Each monk writes slowly, copying sacred texts letter by letter, their obedience measured in strokes. You might think it peaceful, but it's not. In here, knowledge is a cage. The Middle Ages weren't kind to those who read too much. To possess certain books, especially ones that questioned faith or authority, was to invite the noose or the flame. You walk between rows of shelves lined with chained volumes. The sound of the chains rattling feels almost alive, like the books themselves are restless. You reach out toward one that glints in the candlelight, a worn copy of The Secret of Secrets, a text once attributed to Aristotle. It's filled with strange diagrams and astrological musings. Harmless now, but in its time. A death sentence if found outside the right hands. A monk coughs beside you. He looks up, his eyes tired and fearful. You recognize him from some half-forgotten chronicle, Gerard of Cremona, maybe, or one of the nameless translators who risked everything to bring Arabic and Greek learning into Latin Europe. Historians still argue whether such men were heroes of science or heretics in robes. He whispers, they burn words to keep the world safe. You nod, though neither of you believes it. In the medieval imagination, knowledge was fire, and fire had to be controlled. Universities, monasteries, and courts all tried to decide who could handle the flame. But of course, people being people, curiosity always escaped through the cracks. Take Roger Bacon, for instance. Yes, the same friar you met in whispers before. He dared to claim that observation and experiment could reveal God's design better than blind faith. For that, his peers accused him of dabbling in forbidden arts. His books were seized. He spent years confined by his own order. Ironically, centuries later, he'd be called the father of modern science. You can't help but smirk. Medieval irony hits differently when you realize people literally died for inventing reading glasses. Further down the aisle, another figure catches your eye, a woman this time, her cloak drawn tight. She's not supposed to be here. Women weren't often allowed to study, yet there she is, carefully copying a medical text. She's probably modeled after someone like Trotula of Salerno, a real 11th century physician who wrote treatises on women's health. Her books were so advanced that later scholars refused to believe a woman had written them. For centuries, they reattributed her work to anonymous male doctors. The quirk of history, erasure as a form of theft. As you leave the scriptorium, the wind changes. You're outside now, walking through a moon-washed courtyard littered with scrolls. A pyre burns at its center, the flames devouring parchment faster than any army could. You hear the crackle of ink turning to smoke. Somewhere, an inquisitor murmurs a prayer over the pile. Maybe it's Paris, 1233. The First Inquisition against heresy has just begun. The targets? Cathars, Gnostics, and anyone reading books that weren't approved by Rome. One particular name echoes in your ears, the Book of the Two Principles. It argued that the world was a struggle between forces of good and evil, an idea not so far from most religions, but too independent for the Church's liking. Possession alone meant execution. You imagine finding such a book under your mattress. One look at the inked pages and you'd have to decide, confess and burn it, or keep it and burn yourself later. There's a strange comfort in knowing that even back then, censorship never really worked. People always found ways around it. Margins filled with coded messages, secret societies disguised as prayer groups, even musical notation hiding texts between the lines. A fringe legend, perhaps not entirely true, speaks of the wandering librarian, a monk who traveled across Europe smuggling banned manuscripts under false bindings. Some say he disguised heretical works as cookbooks or psalters. Others insist he was caught and executed, but that his collection survived, hidden beneath the stones of a remote abbey. No one's ever found it, but historians still debate whether it existed at all. You pause to consider that. Whether he lived or not doesn't matter, the idea of him did. In every age, there's someone willing to risk everything just to know. By now, the night has deepened into velvet. You follow the flicker of lanterns into a small university town, Bologna, maybe, or Paris. Students stumble through narrow alleys clutching scrolls, muttering Latin oaths against their professors. You overhear snippets of argument, theology, philosophy, forbidden astronomy. One boy claims the earth moves around the sun, another laughs until he realizes he's serious. They fall silent when a priest passes by. Then the boy with the bold ideas whispers, "Don't worry. They can't burn the sky." You file that one away, it'll come in handy when Galileo eventually steals the stage centuries later. Inside a tavern, scholars drink wine from chipped cups and debate the nature of crime itself. One insists that heresy is the worst sin, another argues that ignorance is. You sit nearby, pretending not to listen, but their words flow into you like warm mead. It's strange, how in every century, the most dangerous criminals are those who simply ask why. The candle gutters low. A scholar named Sigier of Brabant, real as rain, slumps at the table beside you. He was accused of spreading double truth, the idea that faith and reason could both be true, even if they disagreed. He'll soon be tried by the church, though historians still argue whether he died by dagger or despair. You think of him, and of all those whose crimes were made of questions, not answers. When you step outside, the courtyard is quiet again. Ash drifts through the air like snow. Somewhere in that silence, a page turns itself. The words that survive tonight will go on to seed the Renaissance, the Reformation, the entire modern world. You draw your cloak tight and smile faintly. Maybe knowledge always wins, not quickly, but inevitably. Still, you glance back once. Half expecting to see the librarian's ghost slipping through the shadows, a stack of forbidden books under his arm, he nods to you, just once, and vanishes. The pyre crackles again, but this time, you swear it sounds like laughter. The laughter from the burning pyre fades into the rustle of leaves. You follow that sound, and before you realize it, you're standing at the edge of a vast, dark forest. This time, you're leaving behind the scholars and the scribes. The air smells of pine, earth, and something faintly metallic, coin, maybe. You're stepping into the domain of medieval bandits, the trees close in like walls, branches tangling overhead to block the moonlight. Somewhere in the distance, a horse snorts, then the dull ring of metal, sword against scabbard. You catch the faint flicker of firelight ahead and creep closer. A small camp glows among the roots of an oak. Men and women huddle around it, cloaked and dirty, their laughter sharp and fast. They're passing around a skin of wine and counting out stolen silver. The leader looks up, and though he's just another outlaw, his face feels eerily familiar. Every country had their version of him, Robin Hood in England, Eustace the monk in France, Fra Diavolo in Italy. All real, or almost real, figures who blurred the line between villain and folk hero. Historians still argue whether these stories were built from truth or wishful rebellion. Maybe both. You sit by their fire, and someone hands you a piece of bread so hard it could double as a weapon. They talk freely, because in the forest, no one bothers with titles or prayers. The rules here are older, simpler: steal to survive, share to stay alive, vanish when the sun rises. You glance at the leader again, let's call him Eustace. He was once a Benedictine monk, they say, until greed or boredom pushed him to piracy. His legend sprawls across the English Channel like fog. One day he's raiding ships for the French crown. The next he's robbing it blind. He changes sides so often even chroniclers stop trying to keep track. When he finally died, beheaded on deck in 1217, his executioner supposedly tossed a sack of silver beside his head, saying, "For the wages of deceit." A fitting medieval severance package. The firelight catches on a woman's face across from you, scarred, proud, eyes like daggers. She calls herself Mary Frith, though she'd later be remembered as Moll Cutpurse. Technically, she belongs to the early 1600s, but her spirit fits right in here. She wore men's clothes, smoked tobacco in public, and ran a network of thieves in London. You could argue she was the medieval world's first celebrity criminal. Plays were written about her while she was still alive. She even attended her own stage portrayal once, apparently heckling the actors for getting her accent wrong. The outlaws around her laugh and sing, voices rising into the night. Their songs are half protest, half prayer. You realize this is what freedom must have sounded like in the Middle Ages, rough, off-key, but defiantly alive. A few paces away, a boy stands guard, his bow drawn. He's no older than 15. His face looks anxious when you approach. He tells you they call him Robin not because of the legend, but because he's quick as a bird. He's already stolen from sheriffs, bishops, and once, he says proudly, a duke's kitchen. His biggest crime so far. Hope. You follow him through the woods until the path opens into a hidden clearing where spoils are stored, sacks of grain, bolts of cloth, even a small chest of coins. Not all of it stolen from nobles, though. Some of it clearly came from travelers, ordinary folk who simply had bad luck crossing the wrong stretch of road. So you ask the question that's haunted every outlaw story since time began: are they heroes or just hungry? The boy shrugs. Same thing, some days. That's the truth of medieval banditry: less romance, more necessity. Famines, taxes, endless wars, people turned to theft because survival left few alternatives. Some outlaw bands became so organized they were practically governments of their own. In 14th century Germany, the Schwarzhofen, the Black Troop, patrolled highways, collecting tolls from merchants. Pay up, or your cart might mysteriously catch fire. In England, outlaw gangs like the Fauville brothers blurred the line between vigilantes and villains. They murdered corrupt officials and protected peasants, when convenient. To the authorities, they were pests. To the locals, they were justice with dirty boots. You crouch by their campfire again, watching sparks drift upward. Ever think of going back? You ask the leader, he laughs. Back where? The towns are worse than the woods. He's not wrong. Medieval cities were breeding grounds for crime, thieves, pickpockets, forgers, even alchemists selling fake gold. At least in the forest, betrayal smelled of rain and smoke instead of perfume and politics. There's a fringe tale about a highwayman known only as Lopendu, the hanging one. He was rumored to have survived his own execution by bribing the hangman, only to return to rob the same officials who sentenced him. Some say he became a legend haunting crossroads. Whenever a traveler saw an empty gallows swaying in the wind, they whispered his name. Whether he existed or not, his story terrified tax collectors for decades. A log pops in the fire, scattering embers like stars. Someone begins a new song, slower this time, about a man who steals bread for his family and dies with a smile. You find yourself humming along. Historians still argue whether medieval outlaws were truly rebels or just byproducts of a broken system. But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe they were simply the mirror the system didn't want to see. As the night deepens, the camp quiets. You can feel the forest breathing around you. The steady rhythm of wind through branches, the distant hoot of an owl. The bandits drift into sleep, their dreams heavy with stolen gold and impossible freedom. You lie back on the cold ground, staring at the sky through the canopy. The stars flicker like watchfires on some celestial road, too far away to rob, and for a brief moment, as the forest hums and the fire sighs, you almost understand them. People steal what they're denied: safety, power, even songs. In the morning, they'll be gone, trails covered, names forgotten. The forest will swallow them whole, as it always does. But the stories? Those never really die. You smile into the darkness. Maybe you'll tell one of them tomorrow night. Maybe you already have. You leave the forest behind as dawn stretches pink and gold across the horizon. The road ahead is flatter now, winding through small villages and hamlets where smoke curls from chimneys and the scent of baking bread drifts lazily in the air. Yet beneath the peaceful surface, the medieval world hums with quiet, deadly tension, because crime here isn't just the work of robbers or spies, it's woven into the fabric of daily life itself. You step into a bustling market square. Merchants shout, children dart between stalls, and the smell of roasted meats competes with the tang of tanneries. But watch closely, behind the cheerful chaos lurks thievery on every corner. Pickpockets brush past nobles, small-time fraudsters sell counterfeit coins, and unscrupulous vendors mix herbs with lead to increase weight. It's almost charming, in a grim sort of way. Historians still argue whether most medieval crime was opportunistic or systemic. The truth? Probably both. Poverty, oppressive taxes, and the rigid social hierarchy created a world where bending or breaking rules became survival. You pause at a stall selling dyes and fabrics. A woman hands you a vibrant piece of cloth, too vibrant, you notice. She whispers that the merchant has been skimming taxes and importing illegal silks from Florence. In exchange for your silence, she offers a secret route out of town, should you ever need it. You pocket the tip, feeling the subtle thrill of forbidden knowledge. Nearby, a man in a simple tunic argues with the local magistrate. His hands are bruised, his voice hoarse. He claims the town officials stole his sheep, but of course, no one believes him. Property disputes were a common source of conflict, often turning neighbors into enemies overnight. Violence was less about ideology here and more about keeping one's livelihood intact. You wander further, drawn toward a quiet alley. Shadows move strangely in the dim light. A blacksmith hammers in the distance, sparks dancing like tiny fireworks. Behind a stack of barrels, you catch sight of a figure exchanging a sealed letter with another. The handwriting is familiar, elegant, deliberate, yet dangerous. It's a contract, a bribe, or a plot, perhaps both. Medieval crime was rarely a simple act, it was layered with strategy, hierarchy, and social choreography. You overhear gossip of a man named Gilles de Rice, a once heroic companion to Joan of Arc who later fell into infamy. Soldiers turned murderer, his wealth funded lavish estates and disturbing private theaters. Tales of his cruelty spread like wildfire. Scholars still debate how much of it is fact and how much legend. Either way, Gilles serves as a grim reminder that privilege could shield crime for a time, but not forever. The smell of bread and burning wood blends into the air as a small child offers you a coin she found in the street. You accept it politely. In the medieval mindset, even small acts of theft carried moral weight. Taking what's unguarded might be survival, but every coin or loaf was measured against the eyes of God and the watchful town. You notice a group of women across the street performing a shadow play for a small audience. Hidden within the gestures and laughter are subtle jabs at the local bailiff and corrupt tax collectors. Satire was another form of crime, insubordination dressed as entertainment. Authorities tolerated some of it, but pushed too far, and imprisonment or worse awaited. A tavern door creaks open. You step inside to find a warm, dimly lit room filled with the smell of ale, wood smoke, and faint body odor. Minstrels play instruments slightly out of tune, while patrons argue over debts, rumors, and gossip. You overhear a conversation about counterfeit coins. A stolen horse, and an escaped prisoner, all discussed casually, as if normal life itself depended on bending rules. Suddenly, the tavern hushes. A man bursts in, face flushed, carrying a letter sealed with black wax. He announces that the town magistrate has been bribed, and that the previous night, several prisoners vanished from the dungeon. The crowd mutters in shock and awe, "This is real-time crime, not legend." You can feel the tension thickening, like fog trapped in the rafters. A fringe story circulates: the night clerks, a secret society of townsmen and women who ensured thieves and fraudsters paid partial debts rather than hanging, supposedly existed to keep social balance. Some historians dismiss them as folklore, others find small, scattered records supporting the idea. Either way, it's comforting to imagine someone was quietly keeping the peace in an imperfect world. You leave the tavern, stepping into a chill evening. Lanterns flicker, and the sounds of the market fade behind you. The road stretches on, lined with shuttered houses, and somewhere a dog barks. It's another reminder that medieval crime wasn't always sensational, it could be everyday. Unassuming, and still just as dangerous, you trudge onward, imagining the countless lives touched by theft, fraud, betrayal, and hidden heroism. The world feels alive, chaotic, and strangely intimate. You realize that in every village, city, and forest, crime shaped the rhythm of daily life, weaving a tapestry you can trace from the highest noble to the lowliest serf, and somewhere in the shadows, someone is already planning the next heist, the next lie, the next story that will keep history whispering through the ages. The sun has dipped below the horizon, leaving a twilight haze that blurs village rooftops and church spires into indistinct shapes. You trudge along the main road. The soft clop of your boots mixing with the distant chatter of tavern patrons closing up for the night. The medieval world, you realize, never truly sleeps, it only waits for darkness to reveal its subtler crimes. You reach a bridge spanning a slow, murky river. The planks creak beneath your weight. On the far bank, a lone figure leans casually against the railing, a notorious forger, they say, who can replicate any seal, any signature, any mark of authority. The kind of person who makes kingdoms wobble without ever raising a sword. In this time, forged documents were more dangerous than bullets. One misplaced parchment could divert armies, redistribute wealth, or even topple a king. Historians still argue whether these forgers were clever survivalists or calculated anarchists. Perhaps they were both. The figure gestures for you to come closer. You notice a small chest beside them. Inside are coins stamped with a dozen different mints, papers folded with invisible ink, and a tiny notebook filled with careful, cryptic instructions. They offer you a glimpse at a counterfeit passport of sorts, an official-looking scroll granting safe passage across borders, when in truth it means nothing but trust and cunning. You try to imagine traveling with this document. One glance at the ink, one misstep, and your neck might be at the mercy of a city guard. Medieval bureaucracy could be just as lethal as any highwayman, it seems. You continue walking along the river, past an old mill whose wool creaks and groans with the water's rhythm. A fisherman tugs in his net, muttering curses in Latin. Theft, he complains, has become so sophisticated even fish are stolen. Someone once allegedly used a net to scoop gold coins from a riverbed while the local authorities pretended not to notice. Fringe stories, yes, but you notice the glimmer of plausibility in his weary eyes. Further along, you encounter a medieval counterfeit ring operating with the precision of a small factory. Lead seals are melted, pressed, and cooled. Coins are polished and stamped with the likeness of kings long dead. The workers move silently, shadows in the moonlight, passing items like sacred objects. Their expertise is remarkable, almost artistic. Some speculate that these rings influenced the first European banking systems, others argue the chaos they caused outweighed any innovation. Nearby, a pair of women whisper as they prepare herbal concoctions labeled as medicines. In reality, the brews contain enough laxatives, stimulants, or poisons to make someone very ill, or conveniently disappear. Alchemy, you realize, was sometimes just medieval chemistry with questionable ethics. You pause and remember stories of Gilles de Rais again, of Robin Hood, and the Highway Queen. Crime in this era is multifaceted: bandits in the forest, thieves in the marketplace, traders in palaces, and quiet manipulators in alleys. Some, like the counterfeiters or poisoners, never made the chronicles, but their work shaped the way towns functioned, influencing laws and social norms. A sudden sound, a distant bell, or maybe a shout, alerts you. A patrol of city guards passes by. Torches flaring in the fog. They're hunting pickpockets, spies, or perhaps those whispering too loudly about taxes. You duck into a shadowed doorway, heart thrumming. The medieval streets are alive with the smell of wet stone, wood smoke, and fear. Even when nothing violent occurs, you move on, guided only by the dim light of lanterns swinging gently in the wind. Every corner you pass hides another potential story: a man smuggling salt, a clerk forging receipts, a widow hiding stolen grain to feed her children. Crime, you realize, is not always about villainy. Sometimes it's about survival, sometimes about wit, sometimes about revenge, and sometimes it's simply a reflection of human nature in a world where laws were uneven and mercy was selective. By the time you reach a quiet meadow, the first stars peek through the clouds. You lie back in the grass, listening to the whisper of the wind and the faint creak of distant carts. Medieval criminals, you reflect, were not only products of their time, they shaped it. Every theft, every forgery, every whispered secret influenced economies, wars, and families in ways historians still puzzle over. Somewhere in the distance, a fire flickers, a bandit camp, perhaps, or a farmer burning refuse. You smile faintly, thinking that the night holds more stories than any city chronicle could capture. And as you watch the stars, you realize, every crime has its echo, and every echo finds a listener. Even centuries later, the road narrows as you leave the meadow behind, dipping into a low valley where mist curls around the roots of gnarled trees. The scent of damp earth and moss fills your nostrils, and you notice the faint metallic tang of coins long lost, or stolen. The medieval world has taught you by now that crime is never far from the surface, whether hidden beneath roots, in the folds of a cloak, or etched into parchment. You move carefully, listening for movement. Somewhere, the distant bark of a dog blends with the creak of wagon wheels over cobbles. The valley is quiet in a deceptive way, like the calm before a storm. And yet, even here, shadows hint at danger: thieves returning to a hidden cache, a spy retrieving a letter, a fraudster meeting a client under the cover of darkness. Each figure is fleeting, almost spectral, but their presence is unmistakable. In the center of the valley, you find a small stone bridge spanning a narrow stream. Its surface is slick with moss. Beneath it, the water glints silver under the moonlight. You kneel to peer in, and for a moment, you imagine the countless coins, rings, and stolen trinkets that may have fallen into this stream over the centuries, forgotten treasure of those who lived and died on the margins of law and society. Some were recovered, many never. Historians still argue whether medieval societies were more shaped by crime or by the punishments meted out for it. You continue onward, following the faint sound of voices. Soon, you stumble across a clandestine gathering, a mix of bandits, spies, scholars, and forgers. They are sharing information, bartering stolen goods, whispering secrets. Somewhere in the distance, a fire flickers, a bandit camp, perhaps, or a farmer burning refuse. You smile faintly, thinking that the night holds more stories than any city chronicle could capture. And as you watch the stars, you realize, every crime has its echo, and every echo finds a listener. Even centuries later, the road narrows as you leave the meadow behind, dipping into a low valley where mist curls around the roots of gnarled trees. The scent of damp earth and moss fills your nostrils, and you notice the faint metallic tang of coins long lost, or stolen. The medieval world has taught you by now that crime is never far from the surface, whether hidden beneath roots, in the folds of a cloak, or etched into parchment. You move carefully, listening for movement. Somewhere, the distant bark of a dog blends with the creak of wagon wheels over cobbles. The valley is quiet in a deceptive way, like the calm before a storm. And yet, even here, shadows hint at danger, thieves returning to a hidden cache, a spy retrieving a letter, a fraudster meeting a client under the cover of darkness. Each figure is fleeting, almost spectral, but their presence is unmistakable. In the center of the valley, you find a small stone bridge spanning a narrow stream. Its surface is slick with moss. Beneath it, the water glints silver under the moonlight. You kneel to peer in, and for a moment, you imagine the countless coins, rings, and stolen trinkets that may have fallen into this stream over the centuries, forgotten treasure of those who lived and died on the margins of law and society. Some were recovered, many never. Historians still argue whether medieval societies were more shaped by crime or by the punishments meted out for it. You continue onward, following the faint sound of voices. Soon, you stumble across a clandestine gathering, a mix of bandits, spies, scholars, and forgers. They are sharing information, bartering stolen goods, whispering secrets. The scene is chaotic but strangely organized, a microcosm of medieval society where legality and illegality often overlapped. It's like stepping into a living tapestry of human ingenuity, desperation, and cunning. A familiar face emerges, the Highway Queen, once legendary on the roads of France. She sits beside a pile of letters, coins, and maps, laughing softly as she sorts through them. Her smile carries both charm and menace. She gestures for you to sit, and though you hesitate, the warmth of the fire invites you. Around her, people speak in hushed tones about schemes, rescues, and cleverly orchestrated heists. You watch as a young pickpocket discreetly exchanges a pouch of coins for information about a corrupt magistrate. Across the fire, a scholar discreetly sketches symbols on parchment, encoding a secret message for a trusted ally. The Highway Queen observes quietly, offering subtle guidance with a wink or a nod. It strikes you that in this world, crime was a form of intelligence, artistry, and occasionally, morality. Stealing from tyrants, saving a friend, preserving knowledge, all blurred the lines between right and wrong. Stories of Gilles de Rice, Moll Cutpurse, the Black Troop, and countless others converge here, as if time itself folds to show you the continuum of human ingenuity and audacity. You reflect on the scope of it all, the way crime shaped roads, courts, towns, and entire nations. Highwaymen taught vigilance, spies enforced paranoia, executioners enforced law with a precision that bordered on artistry, and scribes preserved forbidden knowledge that would one day ignite revolutions. Medieval criminals weren't merely villains, they were catalysts. They forced societies to adapt, to question authority, and to survive. As dawn begins to paint the horizon in soft pink and gold, the valley grows quiet. The fire dwindles, and one by one, the figures disappear into the mist. You're left standing on the bridge, staring into the stream below, thinking about the echoes of the past. Every stolen coin, every secret letter, every whispered conspiracy still resonates in history, shaping how we view law, morality, and survival. You take a deep breath, letting the cool morning air fill your lungs. The medieval world, with its thieves, spies, and rogues, is a world of shadow and light, fear and humor, despair and daring. You've walked its roads, listened to its whispers, and witnessed its audacity. And now, carrying the stories with you, you step forward into the dawn, knowing that while the criminals themselves may be gone, their stories, and lessons, endure. The morning sun stretches lazily over the horizon, turning the mist into pale gold threads that weave through the valley. You take a slow, deliberate step onto the soft grass, feeling it give beneath your feet. The world around you is quiet now, almost as if it is catching its breath after centuries of shadows, schemes, and daring deeds. You imagine the voices of the Highway Queen, the scholars, the bandits, all fading into the soft hum of the earth waking. You breathe deeply, allowing the crisp, clean air to fill your lungs. There's a strange comfort in knowing that history, even the darkest parts, eventually finds rest. Every coin lost in a river, every letter burned or hidden, every daring heist, all have become stories, threads woven into the fabric of time. The echoes are gentle now, more lullaby than alarm. You wander slowly along the riverbank, the water murmuring softly beneath the stones. It reminds you of the rhythm of life itself, flowing, bending, sometimes turbulent, always moving forward. And like the river, human ingenuity, ambition, and audacity continue, even when masked in shadows or veiled in secrecy. As you watch the light deepen, your pace slows.